I'm coming home, I'm coming home, tell the world I'm coming.
Somewhere between the trenches of the Somme and the trading floors of Wall Street, a machine was born that never asks who wins a war, only whether the invoices get paid on time, and that machine is still running today. Quietly, patiently, profitably, disguised as patriotism, disguised as national security, disguised as the price of freedom, when in truth it is one of the most successful business models ever engineered. And to understand it, you have to go back to 1914, when the United States entered the First World War not as a moral crusader, but as a creditor with a problem. Because American banks had already lent hundreds of millions of dollars to Britain and France, and if the Allies lost, that money would vanish. So Washington did what any anxious lender does. It protected its investment, it sent troops, it sent steel, it sent credit, and by the time the guns fell silent, the United States had transformed from a debtor nation into the world's largest creditor. And a lesson had been learned by the men who counted the money. War does not have to be a catastrophe. It can be a balance sheet. And this lesson matured through the Second World War, when American industrial output exploded, when factories that once built cars now built tanks and bombers, when unemployment from the Great Depression evaporated almost overnight, not because of clever policy, but because of massive sustained military spending. And this is the moment economists later gave a name to: military Keynesianism. The idea that a government can stimulate its entire economy indefinitely simply by preparing for or engaging in war. And unlike a bridge or a school, a bomb has a beautiful economic property. It gets used up. It must be replaced. It creates permanent demand. And permanent demand is exactly what capital craves. So when the Cold War began, the war machine did not shut down. It simply changed its address, moving from the battlefield into the boardroom, into defense contracts, into the arms race. And in 1961, a five-star general turned president, Dwight Eisenhower, stood before the American people and warned them, in his farewell address, about the rise of what he called the military-industrial complex, a vast and permanent alliance of arms manufacturers, and the armed forces that had acquired, in his own words, unwarranted influence over American democracy. And almost nobody listened, because by then the profits were too large, too entrenched, too woven into pension funds and congressional districts and university research budgets to unwind. And so the pattern repeated: Vietnam, the Gulf War, Afghanistan, Iraq, each conflict justified publicly through ideology or security, and each conflict quietly functioning as an economic engine, generating contracts worth trillions of dollars for a small number of defense corporations whose stock prices, tellingly, tend to rise the moment tension escalates anywhere on Earth. And here's the part that rarely gets said out loud. This system does not actually require victory to be profitable. It does not even require the war to end, because the contracts are signed regardless of outcome. The weapons are sold regardless of outcome. And the debt used to finance all of it accumulates regardless of outcome. Which brings us to where we stand right now, because the United States is currently carrying a national debt exceeding $30 trillion. A debt shaped in no small part by decades of military spending layered on top of military spending. And the uncomfortable question worth asking is this: are we still living inside the same historical loop that began in 1914? A loop where conflict is quietly monetized, where crisis becomes collateral, where the bill is handed to future generations while the profits are collected in the present. And if that is true, then the real war was never fought only with weapons. It was fought with balance sheets, with interest rates, with the slow, invisible transfer of wealth from ordinary taxpayers to a financial elite that never has to hold a rifle to win. And understanding this is not just historical curiosity, it is a survival skill for anyone trying to make sense of the modern economy. Because the next time you see headlines about rising global tension, watch not only the borders, watch the bond markets, watch the defense stocks, watch who benefits before a single shot is fired. Because in this system, the trigger has always been financial long before it is ever literal. And the machine built in the trenches of the First World War is still running, still profitable, still largely unquestioned, and the only real defense against it is knowing exactly how it works.